Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. It was a pleasure attending the party of the year in Nairobi yesterday. This was the celebration of the Queen's birthday here in Nairobi. Got there quite early, and I'll post a photograph of the entrance into this rather grand tent that was there. Tremendous food and drink and lots of very interesting people. I'm caught up with many folks, including the outgoing managing director of East African Breweries, that being Charles Island, and the incoming managing director, that being Andrew Cowan. Many other folks, the Attorney General, the man caught in the crossfire at the IEBC, so many folks. It really was very sort of a place full of serendipity. You just sort of pop round a corner and you'd meet somebody. And it was also then a pleasure meeting the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Africa and the Middle East, Eric Meyer, who I had a meeting subsequently that evening. I made a presentation at the Deloitte tax seminar. It was more about the global economy, Africa. As I saw it, some things have already changed. I was highly critical of President Buhari's currency regime, and he's now changed that. So that's a step in the positive direction. I was talking about Zupta economics, and then about East Africa shining bright in the comparison with the rest of Africa. If you haven't seen Nikhil Hira's presentation from that seminar, take a look. The link is there as well. Bloomberg Markets tweeted, "When it comes to negative rate debt, are investors playing with fire?" And the thing is, it's just extraordinary. We've never seen this kind of scenario where long-dated papers basically negative yield. And it tells you that we really are in an unprecedented place in this negative yield universe, in my opinion. Dollar yen moved softer. The yen softened up on the back of Taro Asso's comments that the recent moves are one-sided, abrupt, undesirable, speculative. 11th of January, I wrote a piece where I said the Japanese yen is one of my conviction trades for 2016, and that conviction was to buy the yen just about against everything. How do the BREXIT and Scottish Indy referendum odds stack up against each other? Here's how. This is via Betfair, quite an interesting comparison. Obviously, we had a very tragic event yesterday. The Brexit campaign have decided to suspend themselves for a few days, and that was the signal for a big rebound in sterling. Will the UK exit the European Union was a piece I wrote over the weekend. I've already told you about that. I said that the markets are now faced with 2 weeks of uncertainty. And then the question arises, what happens if the UK does exit the European Union? Modelling that scenario is not easy, and that is why volatility has spiked. Central banks are mulling a dollar liquidity injection. This is as Brexit looms. This is via Holger. Home thoughts, look at this, a spectacular shot from Amboseli National Park by someone called Zigasso by the Kenya Wildlife Service. Pretty amazing. It is an extraordinary park. You have Mount Kilimanjaro in the background, and you have these wonderful elephants that come because there's a big swamp down there. And I like this photograph, a story inspired by Elsa, the lioness, Meru National Park. There's a link for it as well. I went back to this by dancing to Prince. We're all excited, but we don't know why. Maybe it's 'cause we're all going to die. And when we do, what's it all for? You better live now before the Grim Reaper comes knocking on your door. I really enjoy my morning drive, and it's just Hannah and myself now. The older girls have finished their exams, and I drop her at her pickup point, which is in Kikiri. She's just had her first exams, and she's just a wonderful person to have to myself early in the morning. Political reflections: UAE war is over for Emirati troops in Yemen. The UAE says the war is over, though it may continue to keep them there for counter-terrorism operations. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince and Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, carried the announcement on his official Twitter account late on Wednesday. He was quoting Anwar Gargash, the UAE's junior Minister for Foreign Affairs, who had given a speech saying the war is over for our troops. My conclusions are it was never going to be a bed of roses. This is a sensible move to de-risk the UAE involvement. You know, the Yemenis have fought, many people, for their own independence, fiercely independent, and I don't think you can win a classical victory, as it were. I'll put up a photograph of the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince, must have been the Crown Prince then, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan taking a picture during the North Thunder parade. And then from the UAE archives, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan during his visit to Paris. Next to him is a much younger Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. And then I like this photograph of Chinese paramilitary guards standing on the stairs after Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, as he was about to enter. I'm sorry, that's the fire alarm. I'm just going to speak over it because I'll never otherwise get anything done. The International Campaign for Tibet tweeted a photograph of His Holiness the Dalai Lama with ICT Board Chairman Richard Gere and ICT President Matteo Meccaci. Of course, President Obama upset those folks in Beijing by having the Dalai Lama visit him in the White House. Why our nuclear deal with Iran is turning to dust. This is Robert Fisk. The Middle East is littered with missed opportunities, lost chances, and dreams turned to dust. The Iranian nuclear deal is now heading in the same direction. President Hassan Rouhani, hero of the hour, and Iran's new Mr. Good Guy in America, even obtained the support of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, when he signed off on the agreement with 6 world powers last year to reduce the country's nuclear activities in return for an end to Western sanctions. But he's beginning to look like a patsy. The sanctions have been lifted, but they haven't been lifted. Western investments are not, despite all the promises, pouring into Iran, because banks, especially European banks, are too frightened of breaching the rest of America's sanctions laws to do business with the Islamic Republic. Washington both give it and take it away. It's a slogan that every Iranian president should learn. Iran has not been reintegrated into the global financial system. It's an important point, and it's not going to be. Though the Chinese will be happy to do business, Khamenei's supporters are now suggesting that the supreme leader, not the shrewd but naive president, is the great hero of modern Iranian history. After Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, of course. The banks, he says, fear the Americans have not acted on their promises and only removed the sanctions on paper. Worse still, his right. Khamenei's life is the one you should be writing about, one of his believers announced last week. He is the savior. Then Fisk jumps to Beirut, where the Lebanese central bank is caught up in a crisis with Hezbollah. Hezbollah, of course, is fighting on the side of Bashar al-Assad. No Lebanese banks are now allowed to have any dealings or hold any accounts involving Hezbollah members or their supporters. Lebanese banks who break these rules will lose their right to deal in dollars. So really using financial architecture as a coercive instrument. And to be honest, I didn't really realize how much and how strong the rearguard action was till I got to Doha, Qatar. And then I got to grips with how aggressively the GCC and others were seeking to undermine the agreement and to roll back Iranian gains. Put up a photograph of Doha from the sky taken in the morning. State Department officials demand the US attack Assad instead of ISIS. That's probably more a result of the visit of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who probably sort of acted as a catalyst for his assets. Ongoing fighting with the CIA and Pentagon over who the US is actually at war with in Syria appears to have dragged the US State Department in as well, with reports emerging that dozens of top state officials have signed a document protesting US policy in Syria for being focused on fighting ISIS. Described as the dissident channel cable, the document appears to mirror the CIA's own narrative, which is that in attacking ISIS, the US is fighting the wrong war in Syria and instead demands that the US shift focus entirely to militarily imposing regime change on the Syrian government. So still persisting in that theory, which I don't think has worked. It's just undermined Syria and made it a sort of petri dish for extremism. Currency markets, well, we had a most dramatic of days yesterday. Euro dollar, it's now at 112.50, got below 112 by quite a margin yesterday. Dollar index 94.53, Japanese yen, that had a humongous move, now trading 104.18. Swissy 0.9467, the pound 142.62, the Aussie, let me take a quick look, 0.7392, India rupee 67.145, South Korean won 1172.72, Rial 346.52, Egyptian pound 887.92, and the South African rand 1525.64. Dollar index, I'm going to put up a 3-month chart. 93 still remains the key area, and I've spoken about it before. And the bull trend remains intact as long as I know it's not so violent as it was before, but I think it's still there and remains intact as long as we don't fall clearly through that level of 93. German bond yields have slipped to record lows as dovish Fed meets Brexit. This trend is, as I said, is an extraordinary one. Euro dollar, as I said, 112.52. I'll put up a 3-month chart of that. Doesn't feel that strong right now, and that's probably because of the very, very soft interest rate structure. Commodity markets, we saw a phenomenal move in gold, crossed 1300, got as high as 1310, and then fell back to trade at 1284.85 last. Crude oil snapped a 6-session losing streak. I'll put up a 5-day chart. It snapped it just this morning. A little bit of a rebound, but I think we're now in a bear market. And these sort of rebounds are actually perfect opportunities to resell. The yield of Trafigura's bonds, which are due in April 2020, has fallen to 6.33% now, down from a record of nearly 11.4% at the end of September. Angola is currently negotiating a loan from the IMF after oil prices crashed, will gain full ownership of the AEMR mine project. Trafigura, which was a long-standing business relationship in Angola, worked on this iron ore project briefly between 2011 and 2012 before putting it on standby in 2013 and taking a large impairment on it last year. The iron ore project was idled for much of the 27-year Angolan Civil War. The gain that Trafigura got from the iron ore deal prevented a steeper decline in Trafigura's fiscal first-half net income, which fell 10% to $602 million during the same period in 2015. By divesting the asset, Trafigura to Angola, remember, which trades more than 4 million barrels of oil and refined fuel a day, booked a $21 million gain and reversed a $243.6 million impairment it took last year on the project. So, very good outcome for them. Surprisingly, Tanzania is self-listed at stock exchange, and the IPO was oversubscribed 5 times. I'll put up a photograph I took of the Dar es Salaam skyline from the 8th floor of the Hyatt Hotel when we were hosting January Makamba in Dar es Salaam. South African all shares up 2.63% this year. It rallied 1.23% yesterday. Dollar rand 15.2564. Sort of no man's land right now. I think it's a sell when it gets below below 15, and it's a buy as you age up towards 16. Egyptian central bank has raised its key interest rates by 100 basis points. So they've done what they needed to do. Inflation was last at 12.3% in May. Egyptian pound is at 8.88. Egyptian EGX 30 is up 5.91% so far this year. If Nigeria does what it says it will, it can expect a surge in investment. This is The Economist. Some big private equity firms say they've been eyeing up deals, but waiting for news on the currency. Nigeria will have an easier time borrowing $1 billion abroad to help meet a budget deficit of about 2%. A second quarter of negative GDP growth looks inevitable, and with it a recession, but the worst may soon be over. So, pretty optimistic scenario, and there is a chance that this scenario plays out as described. Emefiele, however, expects the Naira to settle at around 250 to the dollar. That's not going to happen. I must assure Your Excellency that we are indeed reasonably optimistic that at some point the rate will settle around 250 Naira. I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I'd be limit short call. Nigerian all share has jumped 1,386 points in 2 sessions since the news of the devaluation came through. It's now negative just 0.53% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 11.2% this year. Rwanda's foreign exchange reserves slide after mining revenues tumble. They've got a facility from the IMF. Reserves would slide to 3.2 months import cover by the end of 2016 and 2.5 months at the end of 2017 before rising. They have a great deal of credibility in these macroeconomic matters, and so the multinational bodies will, I'm sure, support them. Investors invested in Greece, and look how they got burned. But Mozambique is way better than Greece. This is the VTB chief executive Andrei Kostin telling Reuters in an interview Mozambique was not a bad deal, given that even the current situation, possible losses are in line with expected profit. We have our portfolio sold out on the market, so any significant losses for the bank should not be expected. We are in talks with Mozambique, he said. Our position is that the country should pay off, honour its obligations. Kostin said he saw the African continent in general as a high-risk zone, but one where operations should continue. Let me put up a photograph of the statue of Samora Machel, which can be found in the Parque de la Independencia in Maputo. World's first tea futures contracts may be started in Kenya. Kenya, the world's biggest exporter of black tea, is considering introducing the world's first futures contracts for the leaves to help stabilize prices and enable growers to guarantee income from their production. The ability for farmers to be able to hedge out their pricing will be a big win, said Terence Adambesa, head of derivatives at the Bourse. Another plus is the ability to provide a platform for investors who want exposure to a certain asset class that they currently don't have. Tea is the world's most widely consumed beverage after water, according to the FAO. Kenya ranks as the world's third largest producer of the leaves. The average auction price of tea sold in Mombasa has fallen 22% this year to $2.25 per kilogram, after surging 34% last year, according to the Tea Brokers of East Africa Association. Kenya generated $1.2 billion from tea exports last year. I concluded by saying an idea whose time has surely come. The talks are ongoing and we hope to reach a good outcome soon, so says Joe Schwartz of Base Titanium. Long outstanding issues, it'll be positive if they can get resolved now. Base Titanium tweeted through the cotton growing trials, Base Titanium is looking to revive large-scale commercial cotton farming in Kwale. And let me put up a photograph of the special baobab, which when they started the mine, they protected. Safaricom set a fresh record closing high yesterday. It's up 14.11% this year. It's really performed well. Expected target of 2250, we're at 1860. As I said at the time of the results, there are not many companies in the world able to deliver these kinds of numbers and raise the dividend by such an amount. Have a look at the interview I did with Bob Collymore immediately after those results. Kenya shilling 101.29, it's really the Teflon shake, isn't it? Nairobi all share up 1.1% this year, Safaricom lifting that, and EABL. NSE 20 down 6.21% so far this year. 5 airlines express interest in buying majority stake in Kenya Airways. It is true there are firms from the Middle East and America that have expressed interest in Kenya Airways. None of these has firmed up interest, so I cannot give you details, he said during an interview in Brussels. Mr. Macharia is accompanying President Kenyatta, who is attending the EU Development Day meeting, which ended yesterday. The Cabinet Secretary was careful on the effects of any formal announcement about the airlines buying off KQ. Kenya Airways is a publicly listed company, which means there could be sudden interest in its shares. August 2015, I said exactly this. That, in my opinion, it's all about capital. Kenya Airways needs partners and shareholders with much deeper pockets. That is the reality. I said a few months ago I called for a serious discussion with the Gulf carriers. They have deep pockets. It's a no-brainer discussion. It looks like we are finally getting there. Kenya Airways has had a torrid year. It's trading around 390 level, but obviously if there's interest to take a majority stake, we should see a sharp rise. I'll put up a photograph I took of Mombasa as we were taking off. That's a farewell, Mombasa. I was on the Kenya Airways plane, and I'll put a photograph of the meeting with the European Investment Bank Vice President Ambrose Fayole during the EU Development Day. This photograph was posted by James Macharia, the Cabinet Secretary, making the comments about these expressions of interest in Kenya Airways. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Wishing you a great weekend, and thank you.